As a young leader, I felt I had a responsibility to try to stop this war. It wasn't productive. You know, people were not only getting uh, murdered. I mean, there were people going to jail. Uh, Issues on both sides. I mean, not with just the Hell's Angels, but the Mongols as well. When the Mongols attacked Fat Ray, I mean, they all got caught, and they killed Fat Ray, and they wound up some of them going to prison. Uh, so there was issues on both sides, and we ran into the Mongols by accident at the toy run right after the fight started. And Redbeard, who was kind of a strong figure in the Mongols, he had been in and out a couple of times. I don't know all the politics in their club, a little bit different than ours, but he had become a kind of a strong figure. He was a young, big white guy out of Long Beach. And we ran into him at the toy run, and I went up and had a conversation with him, and I told my guys, I go, this is not the place for us to get into it with the Mongols. I go, this is about the kids, this is about the toys, and you know what? We're just going to have to swallow our pride a little bit. So we talked with the Mongols, and they weren't cowering at all. It wasn't like that. I mean, it was a real standoff, and I understood where Redbeard was coming, and I think he understood where I was coming from. We all went our separate ways. Kind of left at the same time, if I recall. I don't remember. It's not important. But I kept thinking, how do we end this? And I came up with what I had learned in the military, what I saw as a tactical retreat. And, we couldn't ride our bikes anywhere. Everywhere we went, we were getting pictures taken of us. You got to figure we had machine gunnings, we had bombings, we had fights, physical confrontations. So you had the feds, you had the Orange County Police because of the investigation with Cliff Mallory, you had the LAPD, you had the LA Sheriffs, you had the Glendale Police Department because that's where our clubhouse was. So you had all these agencies, and one of the big benefits for us was they didn't work together. They weren't sharing information. They didn't want to help each other. But I figured at some point in time, it's all going to come together. And I convinced John that we should petition the Satan slaves to become Hell's Angels. They had been talking about becoming Hell's Angels on and off ever since I'd been around. So I went to Animal. I knew I had to get some support, some strong support. And I said to Animal, this is my idea. Los Angeles packs up, moves to Ventura. Unbeknownst to the police. We don't announce it. We don't do anything. These Satan slaves become patch holders overnight of the Hells Angels. They don't wear a bottom rocker. There's no intelligence that gets leaked out. All of a sudden, one night, they're Satan slaves. The next morning, they're Hells Angels. I said, so what's going to happen is law enforcement's going to shift their investigation to these guys because they are going to be the only Hells Angels visible in Southern California. And these guys had nothing to do with the war. So there's no conflict for them. Nothing's going to come up when they investigate them. And I told the slaves that. I said, look, this is going to be a hot and heavy. You're going to get FI'd. You're going to get pulled over. But I go, if you guys want to do it, you'd be helping us out. I said, because the shit's going to come down on us at some point in time. What's interesting is the Mongols were looking for the least path of resistance. And I think they misjudged. They made a mistake, but that was the Satan slaves. And they started pushing on the Satan slaves a little bit. They started going into Satan slaves bars. And I went to a slave bar when I was a Hell's Angel one night with them. after the conflict started, and we got into it with the Mongols. This is before the shooting started, and we beat the hell out of 3 Mongols, beat their bikes up, and I mean it was crazy. It made perfect sense for them to become Hell's Angels if they were ever going to do it at this point in time. And they were doing a big service not only to Los Angeles, but to the Hells Angels at large. And what we did, they put the patch on, the investigation shifted to them. We packed up, moved to Ventura. Ventura cops weren't, there's no computers, there was none of that stuff, no cell phones. People didn't even know each other's phone numbers. The LAPD and the Ventura police, they had never had any interactions with each other. And so 10 years went by before they finally came down with indictments for things that happened in 1977, 78. It was many years. And the only reason they found out was Brett Eaton, or Brad Eaton, he went by both names, who was building some of the bombs, got busted in New York for drugs. And so they're laying it on him. You're going down for a long time. And, out of the clear blue, probably during one of the interrogations, he said, "How would you like to solve some murders in Southern California?" And that's how they found out we had left. I think there was officers that had suspicions about it, but I don't think there was any investigation or overt action to come after us. I think it was, they outsmarted us. But when you have a witness saying this guy did this guy did that, and some of the stuff he said, he lied. He wasn't a good liar because his story conflicted on certain things. Like they tried to blame me for Ray's murder, along with they had several suspects. They tried to blame me for a attempted murder of a bombing of a Mongol in San Fernando Valley, but they just couldn't make anything stick. But Tom got indicted for the double homicide at the frame up. Guy from Dago, got the double murder, the machine gunning on the freeway of, Redbeard and Jingles. So, they got their pound of flesh, if you will. I had deep roots in Ventura County. I was born in Ventura and, went to school there, surfed down at California Street. So I was from Camarillo, but I spent a lot of time in Ventura. Now, I had roots with the question marks, and Animal had roots with the question marks as well. So that created a special bond between Animal and myself. And when we did come up to Ventura, Animal helped us establish the charter. It was interesting because some of the Oakland members, Animal was just a really complicated guy, really hard to get along with. Sonny would go somewhere and tell somebody, "You're going to stop doing that, or we're going to leave and leave Animal here." And that was his. I guess it wasn't veiled; it was a threat. We're going to leave Animal here. People didn't want to deal with him. He was very difficult to deal with. He'd rather resolve it with physical confrontation. As you can see at Altamont, he knocked out Marty Ballin from the airplane. But so when Animal was sent, some of the people sent Animal in earnest to help Ventura. Some of the people sent Animal down there thinking we wouldn't be able to survive, or if we did survive, that would prove that we were indeed real Hells Angels. And so we slowly started weeding out the other bike clubs. Now, where the Ventura Hells Angel Clubhouse located itself was formerly a motorcycle shop owned by a guy named Lee Stanley, who lived up here in Ojai Valley. And I worked for Lee along with a gentleman named Dave Hansen. Lee turned us both in to motorcycle mechanics. And this is the old days, I took motors apart for years, several years. And then one day he asked me, "Would you like to put this carburetor together?" And that's how I started building motors. I mean, this is the days when every bearing in the lower end was, measured with a micrometer to make sure they were all the exact same size as you installed them into the lower end. I mean, this is really the golden age of mechanics. Really learned a lot from him. Well, the shop was available for rent, and I through Lee and through Dave Hansen, I think Dave might have helped me as well. I contacted the landlord. He remembered who I was. He had been down there a few times, and he didn't give a damn. I was a Hell's Angel. He wanted that rent money every month, and he was a no bullshit guy. And I'll tell you one story about him. Is we were a little bit late on the rent, a couple of days late on the rent, and one of the guys told him, "Fucking kick back, Joe. You're gonna get your fucking money." And so an hour later, now Joe is on crutches. He's handicapped somehow. I don't. He kind of walked with a. I don't know if it was not. I don't know what he had, but he's beating on the clubhouse door with his crutch, and there was a member named Paul. He goes, "Hey, Paul, you want to get it on? I don't like the way you talk to me." And Paul looks at me like, "What am I supposed to do?" And I said, "You fucking go out there, man. What do you mean, what am I supposed to do?" He goes, "What if he hits me with a crutch?" I go, "Well, fucking hit him back." And I knew Joe wouldn't hit him, So Joe, said, "You want to get it on, man?" And Paul said, "No." He goes, "Don't ever disrespect me like that again." And so Joe immediately had our respect. And we gave him the rent money. And the next time Joe called, he was treated with the utmost respect. But we got in there, we set up the clubhouse, and a lot of people don't realize it. Everybody focuses on the bombing in 1984 with the hand grenade that I suspected the ATF had something to do with it. Not the ATF at large, but rogue agents. But there was anybody that's been in the military knows what a satchel charge is. And a satchel charge is a explosives put together and laid by an object or a whatever vehicle, and you light it with a fuse or you set it off with a detonator. I don't know how it happened, but initially when we moved to Ventura, the clubhouse doors were blown off in front of the clubhouse. We never did find out who did it. No one ever claimed. We don't know if it was the Mongols. I don't know if it was a local street gang. I don't know if it was one of the other bike clubs up there. Because what you have to understand, there was like 7 bike clubs up there. There was the Question Marks. There was the Syndicate. There was the Carnalis, had a charter in Ventura and Oxnard. There was the Orphans. There was the Barachos. And there was the Mongols. There was also a part-time club. When I say part-time to spend time in Ventura, the Molochs. They were out of kind of up the Santa Maria area. But so there were 7 clubs permanently in town, and then an 8th club. So we slowly had to start weeding these clubs out. And I basically, we laid down the law. And during all this, there's also a outlaw from Chicago hiding in Ventura somewhere, and his name was Little John, and we were always one step behind him. And ultimately, we caught up with him, and he turned out to be actually a pretty good guy. And he was hiding from the cops, something that happened back east, and he presented himself so well, and he had no interest in giving information to the outlaw. We just decided to let him stay, and we just liked the way he carried himself. We started educating people, I guess, if you will. we would go to the bar on Friday night, and a lot of these guys had seen too many biker movies, and they weren't conducting themselves properly. And, they usually wind up getting touched up. And, I mean, I had somebody come up to me and say he was an orphan. And he said, before we fight, I want to say this. And I just started in on him. I figured somebody says, before we fight, I'm not waiting for the fight. I'm going to get, I'm going to jump right into it. The anticipation was killing me. So, this is what we were dealing with. And we got, Papa Tony from the Mongols, I heard, was living on the Ventura Avenue. He we never caught him, we never found him. He pulled out, it wasn't, he saw what was happening with other Mongols. Now, I was told he did shoot at one of the Ventura members one night. Only Papa Tony knows, because the other members, he didn't get killed that night. He wound up getting murdered, but only Papa Tony knows if that's the truth. He pulled up alongside of him and shot 5 or 6 times at him, never hit him. The syndicate, they didn't last. The question marks kind of were our friends. The Los Borrachos was a family type club. So what we decided was we'd allow the Los Borrachos, and how arrogant of us, huh? The Los Borrachos, the orphans, who I had been watching the Banditos and the Outlaws, who had what they called support clubs. This is long before Hells Angels had any support clubs. And I really learned about that from Keith Ball, Bandit, who was a Los Angeles Hells Angel, who was also the editor of Easy Rider magazine. And he said to me, hey, George, these guys have these support clubs. And he goes, kind of like a farm team on a baseball deal. And I thought, wow, that's kind of interesting. So we thought, well, we'll work with the orphans. They were the longest established club other than the question marks in Ventura. And we would try to draw from them. And it never really worked out with the orphans. The leader of the orphans made several social mistakes. Kind of came to a head, couple of heads. It came to a head one night on the main street in Ventura. We were fighting the orphans out on the middle of Main Street, and the Ventura police pulled up, and everybody stopped fighting, and the officer rolled his window down, and he said, Christie, don't leave anyone in the street. And they rolled the window up and they left. And we thought that was a green light for us just to finish the job. So we pretty much cleaned them out that night. A couple of weeks later, they had been dug in at their clubhouse on Palm Street. A couple of weeks later, they were on a angel dust binge. And Dave Cowan, the president, and one other member, I think it was 2 other members, decided to take their clothes off, run down Main Street, up California Street to City Hall, and they were discharging firearms. And that was just too much. We couldn't tolerate that. And, I had been taught that the dominant outlaw club in town controls the outlaw culture in the town. And we decided the orphans had to go. And within a week or so, their clubhouse, somebody firebombed their clubhouse, burnt to the ground. What was very interesting as well as telling was the fire department, along with the Ventura Police Department, shows up there and drank coffee while it burnt to the ground. So I think that was a major statement. Needless to say, there was never any arrest. The investigation maybe was non-existent. I don't know. But so we were the victors. We were the new sheriffs in town, if you will. So it was the Los Borrachos and the Hells Angels. And we kind of co-survived with them from that point on. That was 1978.